I stepped into the grand pavilion just as the string quartet began playing, and immediately searched the gold-framed seating chart by the entrance. My name wasn't there. My heart sank as I recalled having that navy sheath dress tailored at Amelia's boutique. Amelia herself had pinned the hem and smoothed the seams just for today. I cleared my throat and edged past a table where Mrs. Brooks, my childhood babysitter, sat chatting with old neighbors. She didn't glance up when I passed, proof she was welcomed here while I was not. I approached a waiter stacking champagne flutes beside the entrance. He glanced at his notebook. He'd been jotting down guest names all evening and hesitated before nodding toward a narrow corridor. Overflow seating down the hall, he whispered, his eyes flicking nervously over his shoulder. I followed him past tables draped in ivory linens and peonies, where friends and extended family laughed under crystal chandeliers, until we reached a lone plastic chair tucked beside the staff door. The contrast between the elegant dining room and that lonely chair spoke volumes. The wedding planner hovered nearby, clutching her clipboard. Her brow was damp with worry, as she whispered, "I was told to move your card to overflow seating," and pointed to a single-place card folded in half on her clipboard. She didn't look me in the eye. Her apology trembled in the air, proof she knew this wasn't right. My mother-in-law drifted up behind me, pearls glinting, and leaned in with a knowing smirk. "Only close family gets a table, it's tradition," she said, her voice low enough only I could hear. She tapped her own invitation envelope, trimmed in gold, then traced the edge of the lavish tables inside with her finger. Her gesture made it clear. I had been excluded on purpose. Moments later, Layla swept past in her lace gown, surrounded by bridesmaids in blush pink. I took a breath and asked, "Layla, where should I sit?" She paused mid-laugh, smoothing a stray curl behind her ear, and said evenly, "I guess you don't count." There was no hesitation in her tone, just a cold finality that confirmed I truly was invisible. I placed my hand on the hand-wrapped box I'd carried, feeling the texture of the embossed wrapping paper. Inside was a custom watercolor from Atelier Claire, a delicate painting of her and Nathan beneath our childhood with their names gently scripted beneath the branches. I unwrapped the silk ribbon, pressed the ribbon's end between my fingers, then slid the painting back into its box. That gift, carefully chosen and paid for weeks ago, was undeniable proof of the love I'd tried to offer. I turned from the empty chair, took one last glance at the grand reception hall illuminated by candlelight, and walked out through the double doors. My heels clicked against the marble foyer as I emerged into the cool evening air. No tears, no confrontation, just the weight of proof in every detail. The babysitter's seat, the waiter's notebook, the planner's hesitation, my mother-in-law's smirk, Layla's dismissive words, and the untouched gift. Each moment was real, each gesture deliberate, and as I stepped away, I felt the finality of their decision echo in every footstep. Within an hour of slipping out the side door, my phone buzzed with a flood of messages in our family chat, none of them checking on me. Aunt Rhonda's message popped up first. "Stop acting so immature, Adam." Almost instantly, Uncle Paul wrote, "Very dramatic. You need to grow up." Cousin Jenna chimed in, classic attention-seeking move. I stared at those words on my screen, the same chat I'd muted for everyday chatter. Real-time proof that the family had turned this into a performance. Then I saw Layla's voice note, waiting. I tapped play, and heard her breathless sobs echo through the tiny speakers. "You ruined my wedding," she cried, and I looked like the monster. The distant clinking of glasses and muted laughter behind her made her panic feel immediate. I saved the memo under Layla's wedding smear, tangible evidence of her anguish, even if her tears had been weaponized. I glanced at my missed calls. 0 from Mom. Instead, a text from her read, "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Father is ashamed." No period of mourning, just blame. The words sat in a gray bubble on my lock screen, proof she chose accusation over concern. Later, Aunt Marlene cornered me in the lobby. She leaned close and admitted in a hushed tone, "I brought along Mrs. Thompson, and they still found her a seat inside. Your place card was left with the catering trays." I remembered the planner's apologetic look, and the extra card folded beside the service entrance. Marlene's whispered confession confirmed the swap wasn't an oversight. That afternoon, I met Cousin Olivia for coffee, over lattes. Her voice dropped as she recounted overhearing Mom in the kitchen. "We had to be careful, you know how Adam turns everything into a scene." I pulled out my recorder proof. I wasn't imagining conspiracies but hearing her exact words. Later that evening, Sammy's cousin posted a slick highlight reel on Instagram. It showed the ceremony stage and dance floor, but cut out the hallway entirely. I took screenshots side by side with the unedited video on my phone, capturing the plastic chair and catering trays. A difference was undeniable. Then my mother-in-law called me, her voice soft. "Remember that barbecue last summer? You humiliated me over the marinade, told everyone I didn't know how to cook." I winced, recalling the family gathering where I'd pointed out she'd left out an ingredient by mistake. Pulling up the old group messages, I found her claim proof she twisted an innocent remark into evidence of instability. Each message, recording, and screenshot built the case. This wasn't a misunderstanding, but a deliberate smear. The family's collusion blame in the chat, Layla's crying voice note, Mom's accusing text, Aunt Marlene's secret admission, Olivia's kitchen quote. Sammy's selective video formed a clear narrative. I wasn't overly emotional. I was being silenced. The facts were there, in black and white, impossible to deny. I only saw it all clearly when I spread the evidence out at my therapist's office. I pulled out Mom's bulging expense binder and pointed to the crinkled invoices for Layla's dance recital costumes, hand-stitched tutus, and silk tights, and the airline tickets tucked behind them, all organized under a tab labeled Layla. Next to them I showed the cinematographer's bill for a professional video of her performance. Edges yellowed where the photocopy had been filed. Beneath those pages, I found my own science fair ribbon tucked awkwardly inside the binder's back pocket, pressed against the laundry soap receipts, proof that my triumph had been an afterthought. Gathering lint where everyone else's victories live. When I left college, midway through a semester, I handed Mom the tuition refund check while juggling Dad's hospital wristband and his clinic appointment slip. I'd driven through rush hour traffic in our old station wagon, stopped in the emergency entrance lane so he wouldn't have to walk 10 yards. Meanwhile, Layla was halfway around the world, sending us selfies in a Paris cafe, her latest email boasting about her creative journey abroad. At Thanksgiving, Dad raised his glass and toasted her courage, recorded on my phone, his voice wavering with pride while I rinsed dishes in the kitchen. That contrast, the check in my hand, the clinic sign taped to my dash, the Paris photos glowing on my inbox, proved whose adventures mattered. My therapist had me open the family group chat on her tablet. I scrolled to the message where I suggested a weekend retreat for Mom's arthritis, including a link to a hydrotherapy spa's brochure I'd found online. Instead of thanks, a cousin replied with a laughing emoji, and "Let's just BBQ again." I showed the time-stamped screenshot, proof my thoughtful plans were brushed aside. At family dinners, I found my voice drowned out every time I spoke up. I remembered suggesting we talk about renewable energy one Christmas, only to have a cousin elbow me in the ribs and mutter, "Here he goes again." In contrast, when Layla half mentioned a wine pairing idea, the adults debated Bordeaux labels for the next half hour. My therapist pointed to the group text, dozens of messages about Pinot Noir, 0 about solar panels, and that imbalance proved whose ideas were valued. Then there was the voicemail from Mom, saved on my phone, from the night I cried after being cut from the school play. Her gentle but firm tone saying, "You're not like Layla, don't expect the same," echoed in my head. I played it for my therapist, her eyes widening. It was proof that from childhood on I had been measured by a different standard. My own attempts at family decisions were always labeled too serious or too quiet. I showed her the chat where I pitched a meal prep service, followed by a flood of "he's too intense" comments. I found Dad's voice memo after I proposed a book club. He laughed and said I took things too seriously. Each sarcastic reply and gentle dismissal was saved, time-stamped, undeniable. Laying out the dance invoices, the tuition check, the hospital records, the travel photos, the group chat screenshots, and the voicemails in a single spread made the pattern clear. I hadn't been ignored by accident. I'd been made the scapegoat. And seeing it all in one place, I finally understood why I'd always felt like the outsider in my own family. Huda's message arrived just after dawn, accompanied by 3 screenshots she captured on her phone. The first showed my mother-in-law in the wedding planning WhatsApp group, her text bubble next to a small rose icon. "What about Aria? She won't make a fuss. Put her somewhere neutral." I stared at her name in the chat, proof that this wasn't a harmless joke but a deliberate decision. Below that, in the same thread, was Layla's response, a laughing emoji followed by "Let's play hide and seek with her table." The cruel humor was pinned there in black and white, The second screenshot came from a bridesmaid's private message. Isn't that a little harsh? I could see the cursor hovering over her reply, frozen in indecision. Layla's answer appeared seconds later. She lives for drama. Let's see if she brings it. That offhand dismissal, saved exactly as it was typed, left no doubt this was targeted. Huda told me she'd witnessed the wedding planner quietly shredding my place card behind a stack of menus. She sent a third image showing the planner's trembling hands, fragments of heavy cardstock falling to the floor. The planner's apron pocket was stained with ink, the only proof she'd ever prepared a card for me. At the reception entrance, I watched Mrs. Delgado, my childhood babysitter, smile as a host seated her a few rows from the stage. She clapped and waved, completely unaware of the conversation happening in the planner's office. Seeing her welcomed like honored family while I was left in the hall confirmed the hierarchy was real. Later, a guest pulled me aside beneath the twinkling lights, whispering, "I overheard your mother-in-law at the table saying, some people can't expect to be center stage when they're barely family." I pictured her tilted head and smug smirk, and the way she'd spoken so casually, as if I were an accepted afterthought. When I found the planner again, she offered me a plastic chair by the service door, her voice barely above a whisper. I tried to fix it, believe me. The tremor in her apology, the way she avoided meeting my eyes, was proof she knew the truth of what had happened. Throughout the night, cocktail waiters passed just inches from me, their trays heavy with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I heard the clink of glasses from inside the hall, but no one offered a drink or asked if I wanted to join. That soundtrack of celebration, juxtaposed with my solitary chair, made each moment of exclusion tangible. In my arms I held the gift I'd carried for months, a custom watercolor from Atelier Claire, depicting Layla and Nathan under our backyard oak. The weight of the wrapped frame, pressed against my chest as I turned away from the hollow ballroom, was proof of my hope in its betrayal. No words were needed. The screenshots, the shredded cardstock, the planner's apology, my babysitter's honored seat, the overheard remark, and the uncrossed threshold all spoke the same truth. This was no accident. It was deliberate, and I had every piece of proof to show it. I invited everyone to the living room, carrying a stack of printed pages and my phone, and set the evidence on the coffee table. Mom's chair stayed empty, her gift-wrapped teapot still perched on the armrest, a silent reminder she chose not to come. Layla arrived late, slipping in beside her husband, with her bridesmaids trailing behind. She eased onto the velvet sofa, arms crossed, as if she were here only because she'd been told. I tapped the first printout, a screenshot of the WhatsApp group, where mother-in-law had typed, "She sat in the hallway for 5 minutes. Calm down," complete with the tiny laughing emoji she'd added. The bubble sat next to her name in pale green, proof that she'd dismissed my shame as a joke. Layla glanced at it, but said nothing. Next, I held up another page, showing Layla's reply in the same chat, a string of laughing emojis and the words, "Let's play hide and seek with her table." The smirk on her face as she retyped it, still displayed on my screen, showed she'd enjoyed planning my exclusion. I let the paper rest on the table before me. I played the voice memo from Huda, who had volunteered on wedding day. Her voice trembled as she described watching the planner shred my place card behind the buffet setup, the soft tear of cardstock still echoing in her recording. Layla's eyebrows flickered with recognition, but she kept quiet. My mother-in-law drifted in, then glancing at the spread of receipts and memos, I told the story of the hallway chair, how I'd waited by the service door, the catering trays bumping my shoulder, and showed her the catering company invoice marked overflow seating fee. She threw back her head and laughed, her pearls bouncing. "I thought you'd be grateful we remembered you at all," she chirped. The proof lay in her own bill, bearing my credit card imprint. I turned to Layla's husband, who shifted uncomfortably as I displayed the cafe napkin where Huda had scribbled my mother's whispered words. "We had to be careful, you know how she always makes it about her." The smudge of ink in the coffee stain gave authenticity to the betrayal I'd felt when I overheard them plotting. Then I looked each of them in the eye and said, "Everything you see here happened exactly as documented." My cousin Huda nodded from the doorway, adding, "I was there. I heard and saw it all." Her presence, her voice, and her volunteer badge pinned to her shirt were living proof. I laid down the final piece, the audio of Layla's own voice recorded by my phone, pleading through tears, "You made me look cruel." The room went silent, as her own words filled the air. I asked only one question: why am I always expected to forgive, while you continue to humiliate me." No one answered. The hush that followed was the loudest confession of all. I gathered the tarnished silver locket Grandma gave me in the dog-eared pocket watch Dad slipped into my palm on graduation day, wrapped them in the faded tea towel I'd used to clean their surfaces, and taped a handwritten note to the parcel. "Return these to someone who matters to you." I watched the mail carrier tuck it into the satchel, proof I was severing more than just words. Cheerful invitations dropped through my slot for Mom's annual holiday cocktail party and the backyard barbecue, where Layla always glowed in the spotlight. I tapped decline, without hesitation. One RSVP read back to me, "We really miss you. Family dinners just aren't the same." I answered with a single line, "It was never the same for me," and left that message unread in the group chat. The silent thread that followed was living proof that I'd reclaimed my time. I swapped out my old number for a fresh SIM card, the carrier's text landing on my screen with my new digits. The group chat notification vanished. No more pings of guilt or blame. My exit was simple but irrevocable, proof that boundaries could be drawn with a keystroke. With the money set aside for Layla's wedding gift, I booked a spot at a writer's retreat on a rocky Greek shoreline. The brochure pictured whitewashed studios perched above windblown terraces, olive branches swaying overhead. I arrived, suitcase in hand, and spent my mornings drafting essays in the courtyard cafe, hot espresso at my elbow, and the roar of the Aegean framing every thought. Each email I sent to my workshop leader, outlining character arcs and dialogue revisions, was evidence that I'd redirected my efforts from family expectations to personal growth. Back home, I opened my laptop late into the night and poured memories onto the screen under the working title, "The Hallway Chair." I typed out the first chapter beside Johnny's grill, where the hum of customers and clatter of plates reminded me how distant I'd become from the voices that once dismissed me. The save icon blinked like a heartbeat, proof that my story was taking shape. Then the envelope slid under my new apartment's door one evening. Layla's familiar handwriting on the front, the inside a single line that said, "We should talk." I lifted it onto my desk, untouched. The envelope's unopened flap, crisp against the grain of the wood, was proof that I was no longer required to reopen old wounds. Beside it, I set a simple brass frame I'd found at a vintage market, holding a card I'd once loved. "Respect is not a gift. It's a mirror." Each morning I catch my reflection next to those words, the quiet certainty in my eyes matching the phrase. That sight, my face in the glass, the quote beside it, is proof I've built a life defined not by obligation but by self-respect.